Welcome to the Sooners360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners360. Each week, we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month, and there's also a free trial option. And that's where I'm posting most of my regular written recruiting content. I've amped that up in the last couple of days, so please give it a try. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. I'm also appearing on the Horns Down podcast / YouTube channel, discussing all things OU, including the most recent season, and we'll have some podcasts during the off season. Please like and subscribe to that podcast channel. And also, if you're following this pod on YouTube, please subscribe to the Sooners360 YouTube channel. This is episode 115, the first big junior day event. To the recruiting news. As always, we will start with commitments, and I'm recording this Tuesday afternoon. I apologize about the delay. I've been fighting a little bit of a cold. You might be able to tell by the sort of nasally audio I'm recording. Finally getting over that a little bit, and had some other stuff going on in the Atlanta recruiting headquarters. So I apologize about it being a Tuesday, but the delay until Tuesday afternoon allows me to catch the news, and the news that just broke that visitor Daniel Odom, who was on campus this weekend from St. John Bosco, which is in Bellflower, California, just verbally committed to OU. Daniel is a composite 4-star by On3 and 247. His highest ranking is probably Rivals. Rivals has him as the 143 player in the nation. Number 19 wide receiver. He's 6'2". I've seen him listed at 6'2", about 185, 190. And like I said, he just visited Norman. So this is a nice big commitment for the Sooners. It's nice for the junior day to end up with a commitment. That's not always the case. You know, OU's commitment policy doesn't lend itself to big splashy junior days. If you guys remember the sort of the Mac Brown days where he would get 10, 15 commits on their first junior day, OU's policy of take your visits, don't commit until you're ready, doesn't lend itself to early commitments. And this is, to the best of my knowledge, this was Daniel's first visit to Norman. We're going to have an update on him on the YouTube channel and also my Patreon site, where I'll break down his video, talk about him a little more specifically. We'll have that content this week. But it's a big addition. It does make things very interesting at the wide receiver position. If you've been following me on Patreon, then you know that I put out a class prediction at the end of January, and I had 3 wide receivers in that prediction. They were Aljor Miles from Kaufman. We're about to talk about it in a minute. Mason James from Norman, again, coming up in a minute. And then the last one I had was Davion Gross, who I've talked about quite a bit on this pod. Wide receiver, running back from Frisco Lone Star. Potential 5-star type kid. I had him as the 3rd wide receiver. So it's very interesting that OU has a commitment from Daniel Odom. Maybe that means OU's taking 4 wide receivers in this class after only taking 2 high school wide receivers last year. That potentially makes sense. Continues to show that Emmett Jones is an excellent recruiter at the high school level, doing a good job. Shows that the OU junior weekend, was hitting high points with kids. So that's the commitment news, the hard commitment news, and other adjacent commitment news. OU has now received from Sam Spiegelman, the Rivals, one of the Rivals national writers, a forecast for KJ Ford, Kevin Ford, the Duncanville defensive end, who I've mentioned quite a bit. He was on campus this weekend. Everything seemed to have gone really well with him. He was listed as a probable to visit OU for the weekend. He came and apparently had a great weekend. And the buzz around is enough that at least one national recruiting writer seems to think he could be a Sooner, which would be a big addition. KJ's film is fantastic at defensive end. He's 6'4", 235. He looks big frame, big wingspan, just exactly what you want at defensive end. So if that does fall to OU, that would be a great addition. One of the guys who didn't visit this weekend was Felix Ojo, the left tackle, OU's number one left tackle target. He instead went to Texas, and we've had a prediction for him, a forecast to Texas by Steve Wiltfong. Texas would not surprise me. This early a decision might surprise me. He's been to OU heavily. I think OU and Texas take this battle into the summer, but I could be wrong. We could see some more twists and turns here. But overall, Felix did go to Texas, not Norman. He said he was going to do that. He said he'd been to Norman so many times, and that's really true, that he wanted to branch out and go to some other schools. I know he's Texas's probably top left tackle target. He's the best left tackle player in Texas. It's not a deep pool at tackle in Texas this year. The next best on the top-ranked offensive lineman is John Turntine, who I think is maybe a guard and at best a right tackle. He's more like 6'3", 6'4" than he is a 6'5", 6'6" guy with a massive wingspan. He's not interested in OU, as I mentioned before. OU was not part of his most recent top. I think it was a top 10. Not a big surprise there. So that's kind of the commitment. No commitment news to just lead off. So I was going to say that I don't think any commitments are going to happen, and that's not really a surprise, but we'll move on from that since that's just not accurate. Overall, OU had a really good weekend, had a lot of players visiting, and I'm going to kind of group them into some buckets that I think make sense. And the first bucket here I'm going to talk about are a group of visitors where I think OU maintained or increased their chances of securing verbals later this year. OU, I think, either leads or is in the top 3 territory with this group, who OU has been recruiting heavily since last spring, summer camp visits, and also football games this fall as well. So I've got about 6-7 names here to talk about. The first one is a familiar name again, Noah Best, the offensive guard from Midlothian, 6'4", 290. He's a lean 6'4", 290. I think OU is in the lead here. He could be a center, could be a guard. The next is Pulelite Primus, a big offensive guard from Midland, Texas. He's a 4-star on Rivals, 3-star on some other places. Similar to Noah Best, he's 4-star on Rivals, 3-star elsewhere. They both have fantastic film. I think they'll be composite 4-stars by the time things check out. Primus is 6'5", 320. Similar to Noah Best, I think OU has kind of established a lead. Then we have Norman North wide receiver Mason James, who I've talked about a bunch before, 5'11", 185. Screams Sterling Shepard as a comp just because of in-state Oklahoma City area wide receiver. He's visited a lot of out-of-state schools over the summer. So this process could drag out, but I think OU is doing nothing but establishing how he's a priority and that they really would like to sign him. Then Caden Jones visited from Jenks, running back, 5'11", 190. We all know he's the son of Sooner running back Juan Jones. Had a great year at Jags, nearly 1,500 yards, really excelled in the playoffs. He probably will be maybe 5'11", 200. He's got a lean frame. He can put weight on in college, maybe 6 foot, 200 by the time he enrolls. Again, he's visited other schools. He's put out a top 5 OUs in it. Tennessee is probably the biggest other name in there. I do like OU to get this commitment. I just don't know when the timing will all work out. I don't think he's ready to pull the trigger anytime soon. I just mentioned Miles Ajor as one of the wide receivers. I predicted he visited on campus. He's 6'2", 6'3", 200 pounds. Looks like he's chiseled out of granite. Looks like he's college ready physically. He just had an awesome junior year. I'm not sure if Odom's commitment might make Miles make a move. So we'll see what happens there. But he was on campus. OU hitting all the right messages with, another wide receiver. He's just physically, he's just so big. So Aljur Miles, again, OU in a great place with him. And I already mentioned KJ Ford. So that's one group of guys that I feel like OU's in a really solid position with. I know you did a good job, maintaining a lead, maybe making their lead bigger, just establishing that they are priorities for OU, and the kids just having a great time and being established, reconnecting with the Sooners as soon as possible, and that's always a good sign. The second group are national names, most of them ranked in the top 150, top 200 range, relatively new to OU. All the feedback so far has been very positive in interviews on the various sites. It looks like OU is in a good position to get return visits or official visits at some point. So OU did a good job here. And the first guy I was going to mention was Daniel Odom. And obviously OU got a commitment from him at wide receiver. The next guy was another wide receiver, Jabari Brady, 6'3", 200. He might be much bigger than that. He looks huge. In his photo next to Brent, he looks like a defensive end, not a wide receiver. And he's not this sort of lumbering big wide receiver either. I've watched his film. He's a big physical, fast, athlete. He doesn't look awkward or kind of stiff. Not sure where OU stands in his top lists, but he looks to have had a great time in Norman. Wouldn't shock me if OU gets an official visit, depending upon how wide receiver recruiting breaks out. Then a guy I've been mentioning on my Twitter and on the Patreon site quite a bit, Sincere Johnson, a linebacker from Cleveland, 6'3", 225. He's a massive target, I think, for OU. He's heading to Bama this week. He's had good things to say about OU in an interview with On3.com. The OU defensive staff was just in Cleveland visiting him either today or yesterday, depending upon the photos have gone on Twitter today. I'm just not sure, the exact moment Brent and crew was there. On Twitter, I described this guy as what's his potential. He's like a top 150 linebacker, top 150 player in the nation, but I think he's just a beast at linebacker. The projection I used with a friend was, imagine if K9 Kenneth Murray was developed by Brent at linebacker. That's sort of the ceiling this guy could potentially have. So going to be tough to pull him out of Ohio after Ohio State just won a national championship. But he's the linebacker OU needs to refill the linebacker room. He'd be a great Mike in the OU system. Then Cam Harrion Johnson, I hope I'm saying that name right. From Alabama, defensive end, 6'5", 250 plus. sort of unranked or a low 3-star right now. That's ridiculous. His film and offers are all top 50, top 200 range. Uh, he would fit. We make a perfect fit in the class as a big defensive end. Again, he seems to have had a good visit. OU's doing everything they can. Hit all the right messages with the kid while he was in Norman. And the last two couldn't be sort of more completely different. The first is Valdin Sone, defensive tackle, 320 pounds from Virginia. Sort of unranked right now, but that's not going to last. His family is from Cameroon. He's from Sweden, and he's part of that NFL Europe group that OU used to identify Daniel Akinkimi. He's starting to get major buzz from the recruiting services. His film is raw, but he is so athletic and so big. I mean, he's a huge human being that his offer list is blowing up, and he'll be a 4-star, top 150, top 200 easily, in my opinion. OU's really making him a priority. I mean, that's clear from his social media messaging, and he seems to be sort of clicking with OU. I think for someone of his who has some developmental work to go, being mentored by Todd Bates, that just fits. So if that's a message that that lands, I think it's an accurate one. It would be a good fit for. I think Todd Bates would be a great mentor for this kid. And the last one is the safety I've been talking about, Caden Hall from Florida, 6'3", 200 pounds. He looks that big, certainly confirmed by the social media traffic and the photos. He's an elite guy. On3 has him as a 5-star, fringe 5-star. He was talking about OU 2 weeks ago at one of the combines, followed through with that, visited OU, has given several interviews where he's really talking up the Sooners. And if OU could get him back for either spring game visit or get an official visit confirmed, I think he'd have to like maybe where OU is in this battle, just because he's been talking about Brandon Hall and Brandon Hall's development of safeties like Billy Bowman and recruiting Peyton Bowen and OU's safety play, was at a really improved last year at a high level with Robin Spears-Jennings playing really well. So I think that this would be, I'd imagine OU is going to stay in this recruiting battle. There's no one in-state school that he seems to have connections with, making him a harder pull from Florida. Then we have 3 in-state names to track. They're kind of new. The first one is DJ Ackerson. He is a linebacker safety from the Putnam City area. I believe he's unranked right now, but his film's really good. He looks like a bigger, longer Kendall Dolby with the way he plays. Excellent blitzer. So this could be a cheetah guy. He was offered during the weekend. He has some family connections to the Sooners. And obviously being in Putnam City, that proximity is going to help OU. So keep an eye out for this. This could be something that falls in the next sort of 60 days. Maybe he comes back and watches an OU spring practice or comes to the spring game in April, and that's a deciding factor. Then we have Daniel McMorris, an offensive tackle from Norman. He's 6'5", 260 range. His film's very interesting. He is very athletic. He's raw, but he plays offensive line with an attitude. That seems to be a really high ceiling for him. I'm not sure when OU might offer. I think at the latest we'll know by the summer camp, but it could be before then. His frame and athleticism is very appealing in an overall poor national offensive tackle class. The offensive tackle numbers just aren't what they were last year. So OU could take McMorris, knowing that he has sort of he has the measurables. He's got the frame, the footwork, the athleticism. wingspan, and you basically take him knowing that you got Foji and Fasusi the year before, and you have Isaiah Avery Dent, and you've got Luke Baklanko. So you've got some depth, younger depth in your offensive line room, finally, a tackle, where you could take a McMorris, redshirt him, and let him develop for a year or two. And then he could maximize, his physical gifts and look like an absolute steal. The last one is Braden Presley, a safety from Bixby, 6'2", 190. OU offered him back in November. He has two younger brothers, both that went to OSU, and then one, I think, transferred to Tulsa. He's the biggest. Is he the most talented of the three? I don't know. The first Presley brother was a pretty good wide receiver at OSU, but he's somebody OU's looking at heavily. Sorry, as I nasal through that. So definitely three more in-state names to track added to the in-state, super targets of Taj Overton, Mason James, and Caden Jones. So that would give 6 guys in state. Again, I think Ackerson and Presley are both probably fringe 4-star. McMorris is probably will stay at 3-star until folks start to realize if he puts on some weight and develops over the summer and puts a good senior tape out, all those rankings are going to look silly because he'll skyrocket because again he has all the measurables. He has the things at tackle that everybody wants that you can't train and develop. As always, it's not sure sometimes who's there, who's not. I try to, always focus on guys that I can only track on social media, either by their own presence or other photos. So 3 names I thought might be there. I'm not really sure. The first one is Tavion Branch, the defensive tackle from Pennsylvania that OU's put a lot of effort into lately. I'm not sure if he was there. Davion Gross, who I've mentioned before, I've seen reviews that say he was there, but I've not seen anything directly from Davion. And then there's another wide receiver, top 100 player, 4-star from Waco, Texas, called London Smith. No photo evidence he was there. And Jaden O'Neal, the OU quarterback verbal, has done a pretty good job posting photos of most of the wide receiver visitors. He was hanging out with them all. And then we end this junior day with 2 Aggie Texas A&M verbals from Mesquite, Texas area that visited OU that I think OU would like to flip. The first one is Markel Ford, a safety. OU's been involved with him forever. He chose A&M over the summer after an unofficial visit there. Could OU flip him? Possibly. Like I said, this wasn't his first trip to Norman. He's been there a number of times. I think OU has dented the Aggie verbal, but not quite pushed the flip yet, but it could happen. He's another name added to the safety board. We also have Caden Hall and Braden Presley. So the safety position, again, Brandon Hall doing a great job stacking that recruiting hot board with really good players. Then the other guy is Ryan, and his nickname is Deuce Gilbert. He's a cornerback, 5'11", 180, 3-star, 4-star, depending upon who you look at. And I've been mentioning that OU needs more cornerback targets. So this could get interesting. He had a good visit, has given very positive interviews about OU. So OU needs cornerback prospects. Jay Valai's working on that. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. But Gilbert would be a nice if OU was a decommit from A&M and put himself back out there. He would be a nice addition to OU's quarterback targets. And that's wrapping up all of the junior day activity for you. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of players. OU had a really great weekend. So now we'll move on to the other recruiting news of note. So the junior day must have just ended, and then Bill Bedenbaugh got on a plane and jetted to Virginia to visit offensive tackle target Carter Scruggs. Really good right tackle target, would fit great in the OU offensive line. He's listed OU in his top 12. He has some OU family connections. Parker Thune on OU Rivals just did an interview with him. Interesting. I think OU is in a good place there. So that was right after the junior event. Right before it, the entire defensive staff, plus J.P. Lossman, who's taking advantage of the linebacker spot being empty to go on the road and do some recruiting, went out to California to visit five-star quarterback Brandon Arrington. At one point, OU was in his top 5. I think they kind of fell off a little bit. Obviously, OU, by sending everybody, wants to make it clear to Arrington that he's a huge, huge target for them. And they're just, OU's not going to go down without showing Arrington, as much attention as possible. OU also offered 2026 safety Chase Calicut from Houston North Shore. Not a school OU's had a lot of success at. He's 6'3", 195 pounds, looks great on film. We'll add him to the now fairly crowded safety board. I'm not sure this will go anywhere, noting that Houston North Shore is usually Texas or LSU. But OU made the offer, so we'll continue to track it. Then for 2027, OU offered cornerback from Louisville, a place OU does have success, Talon Mayo, and he's 6'4", 170. And his sophomore film looks fantastic. So he's going to come to the Future Freaks event on March 8th. And he honestly looks like he could be a 6'4" quarterback in the future in college, which will make him, I think, highly sought out. I mean, that kind of length at cornerback is just unheard of and kind of ideal these days. As I mentioned, at offensive tackle, Bill Bedenbaugh is trying to go through. There's not as many targets in Texas or locally, regionally. The rankings are a little low for offensive tackles, so he's scouring the nation, and he's found a guy in Tampa he likes called Cannon Pickett, and offered him 6'5", 300 pounds. Eddie Pierre-Louis is apparently a big fan of this offer, retweeting about it after it almost happened. His film is also very good. So I think Pickett's getting a lot of attention and a lot of offers. So we'll see if OU can stay in there. I'm not sure if Eddie Pierre and Pickett know each other. Obviously, Eddie Pierre's from Tampa. It'd be nice if there's a connection there that could help OU get Pickett on campus. Just because, like I said, tackle's a little weak. OU making a tight end offer. We've got 3 new tight end offers from Joe John Finley. The first is a 2027 offer to Jeremy Cooper. He's unranked right now. That's not a huge deal for 2027. He's from North Crowley, Texas. Crowley was a powerhouse last year, and Cooper's footage is mostly blocking, but he's doing a great job of it. The receiving highlights indicate quite a bit of untapped potential. He's 6'4", 225. Could be bigger than that. That's just what he's listed at. The other 2 tight ends are, first off, 2026, Luke Sorensen from Anaheim Servite, 6'4", 235. OU already has Ryder Mix, and I love that kid on film. Sorensen's very similar. They're both true 2-way tight ends. Sorensen might be a little better at receiver, maybe not quite as good at blocking. But if OU could land these 2 kids, you'd have 2 legit 2-way tight ends to really, restock that room. Then he offered another 2027 tight end from Las Vegas, Zach Fares. I believe that's how you say his last name. It could be Ferez. Absolutely love this film. Huge potential. great looking athlete on the hoof who shows he's a willing blocker. He shows blocking potential, but the real juices here is he just looks like a fantastic receiving weapon. OU's busy. They're out on the road. The coaches are everywhere. So we got a couple more. We got some more offers to go through. Again, at cornerback, OU offered Caden Harris from Tennessee, composite top 150 player. Not sure where OU is in this recruiting, but OU's obviously targeting cornerbacks coast to coast. OU did offer linebacker athlete Braden Rouse from Marietta, Georgia. He's 6'3", 210. Would be just a fantastic will backer in the OU defense. There's already a prediction to Tennessee for Rouse, and like I said, he's getting offers from just about everybody. One name at wide receiver, at cornerback for 2026 to keep an eye on is Carter Stewart from Shadow Creek. I believe that's Pearland, Texas. He's unranked for now, but he just put on a dominating performance at the Miami 7-on-7 event at cornerback. His high school film is at safety, but with his size and length and coverage skills, I bet that OU and everyone else is looking for him to move to cornerback. He's just his film at safety. He's matched up on wide receivers as if he was a corner, and he's doing just a fantastic job in coverage, staying with wide receivers, and just he looks great. I think he could end up being a superstar in this class that's unknown right now. And then we've got another new name for the Future Freaks event. March 8th, this is a 2027 player. His name is Jamion Winfield from Richardson, Texas. He's 6'4", 290 pounds. And he's just legitimately a 30 seconds and then you make the offer highlight reel. He's that good. He's that powerful, that explosive, just an elite looking defensive tackle prospect. So I've skipped a couple of names from 2027 that have received offers. We'll see what shakes out there. The other big news that sort of fell in the last couple of days is OU has their first official visit that I know of scheduled, and that's Chancellor Barkley, a player I've talked about before, offensive tackle from Florida, 6'4", 295 pounds. He set up four official visits. His last one is an OU official visit, June 20th to June 22nd. And I'm betting that will be when the OU has their barbecue U beat their big weekend. So if you're like a recruiting nerd like I am, mark that date in the calendar. That's going to be that's what it looks like will be the big recruiting weekend for the Sooners. And other upcoming news, February 1st should be the Junior Day event as well. The list right now is small, but it should grow as we get closer. The only players I know that are mentioned coming are Emmanuel Ihanocho, the 5-star all-everything offensive tackle from Maryland, and then Jalen Lott, a wide receiver from Texas who has family connections back to UT. I'm sure other names will be added to this, and we'll get more information. Also, it's been stated by several services, I believe. OU Rivals were first to mention it, that Bo Bentley, the OU offer at quarterback, should also be in town. The other OU offer at quarterback should be in town for the February 1st event. Obviously, that's 2 QB offers in the same class. We'll just see how that pans out. Bentley's getting a lot of national offers. It's hard to imagine OU being able to get Bentley and O'Neal in the same class. So we'll see how everything shakes out. Obviously, Bentley has some connections to OU, had a fantastic year at Salina, Texas. His film looks really good. Kind of looks like John Mateer a little bit. You can easily sort of, if you want to see that, you can see that very easily. It's also probably not that far off in terms of a comp. So we'll see if anything shakes out. there in terms of OU trying to take 2 quarterbacks. You can understand OU trying to do that from a depth perspective. I mean, I don't know if there's a good chance, but I think it would be naive to think that you're guaranteed 2 years of John Mateer playing quarterback. So that instantly puts OU's quarterback numbers down. Obviously, the Western Carolina transfer only has 1 year. So if OU wants 2 high school quarterbacks, I could understand that. Making that work with 2 guys as talented as O'Neal and Bentley is rare to impossible. So we'll see what shakes out there. But that's all the recruiting news that I have for you guys. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to leave a rating. If you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the podcast and give us a thumbs up. Also, guys, please consider visiting patreon.com/Sooners360-817, or just go to Patreon and search for Sooners360 to subscribe for more recruiting content on the Sooners360 on Patreon. And that Patreon site keeps this podcast free, keeps this podcast going. So please give us a try. There's a trial. As I said, there's a trial. Give us a shot. More content is going up online on a more regular basis now that recruiting has gotten going again. So thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back later this week with a recruiting video about Daniel Odom, and we'll have a quick update before Friday about the upcoming Junior Day and how OU's recruiting is doing. Thanks, everyone.